love it. Oh, yeah.
Excuse me over there by the TV set. Sit down and shut up.
Yeah, this looks like it. And I've got a fresh taste for this too. Here you go. Oh. 10 points off for obliviousness on my part.
Okay, this is the subtitled versus dubbing panel. And we have representatives from U.S. Manga Corps, U.S. Renditions, myself from Animego, Mr. Paul Minchek for Streamline Pictures, and another gentleman from Animego, one of our translators, Mike House. I think we're basically going to start off by giving our various philosophies of the subtitling versus dubbing continuum, and then open it to questions and debate. So we'll just start from the end there. Well, no, we like to leave the best for last. So we'll start with the worst first.
Was this ever working?
It needs to be adjusted.
Robert Gutierrez will now be.
I've been playing tech all day. And
No, we did. We've tried it both ways.
Can you tap it?
Hello?
Yeah, there we go.
Hold on, keep tapping it.
Carl?
Keep tapping it.
No, not Carl.
Tap, tap, tap.
We're boisterous.
Hey, it was a shout.
Shout. You can hear it. Can you all hear it?
No. Hello.
There.
Yeah.
Hold on. Yeah, now it's working.
Hello. Okay. Hi, I'm John O'Donnell from U.S. Manga Corps. We are currently releasing our first several animations, which are Dina Ange Chao, I Give My All, in the subtitle. We're releasing Dominion in the subtitled version. We are releasing Project Eiko in November in a subtitled version. The reason we're doing this is because the versions which are coming in from Japan are in the original Japanese. We find that at this stage of the market growth, we're primarily speaking to the fans, the anime fans, as opposed to the Main Street, broad stream market. For that reason, we've decided that it's more economically viable for us to put them in very good professional subtitles. And for that purpose, we're using both U.S. Renditions and Animego, who have done our first two, Dominion and Minagecho. And it's better for us to give a quality subtitled version than to do a bad dubbed version. We believe that over the next several years, as the market starts to break out of just a fandom or a cult, if you will, into more of a mainstream market, part of what will be necessary to effect that change will be releasing titles in better dubbed versions. If you want to be, reaching 90% of the American market with a particular release, you really have to be dubbed. If you want to be on TV, you have to be dubbed. So, although at this stage in the market we think subtitles are fine, we will in the future want to expand and release dubbed versions as well. But we like the idea that for the collector market, we always have that original. So I think that you'll see that even if we do dubs in the future, we will have subtitled versions as well.
Okay, I'm Robert Hampton of U.S. Renditions, and basically we have five tapes out right now that are subtitled: Gunbusters Volume 1, 2, and 3, Dangaio 1, Appleseed, and Black Magic M66. And actually, Gunbuster 3 and Black Magic will be out in about a month. And they're all subtitled because basically, like U.S. Manga Corps is doing, we were targeting the primarily, fan market at this point, which is part of what our parent company, Books Nippon, has been doing for about the last 15 years. But also, we recognize that eventually we're going to have to move into dubbing if we want to get into the major market. At this point, I personally, if this is going to be a thing of personal biases, I like subtitling primarily because though it does obscure some of the animation at the bottom, generally you're able to do a more accurate translation than the ADR process, which generally relies on syncing the dialogue to the movement, to the mouth movement, and often to do that you have to radically change the dialogue, which is not something that has been successfully accomplished, I think, up to this point. So U.S. Renditions is primarily focused on subtitling, and with the option of moving into dubbing as things progress.
I'm going to exercise my privilege as moderator and pass it on to Carl. I'm going to speak last.
Anyway, you probably all know who I am and what I do. Probably. I listen to debates about subtitling versus dubbing with reservation because I keep hearing that people do not think that the dubbing process, creates quality dubbing. And on certain things that you may have seen that have been dubbed, I agree. And I even agree that Akira, which we released in English, is not the optimum dubbing. My company did not dub that film. That film was dubbed for the Hong Kong market. And interestingly enough, that film was dubbed with under the auspices of the Akira Committee and was approved by every major filmmaker on the film, from a Como down to U.S. Representative, Mr. Mike Haller. So even though you may not particularly like something, or I might not particularly like something that's dubbed, those things are dubbed, and not in a vacuum, and not without the knowledge or awareness of the dubbing by the Japanese filmmakers that deal with them. My company right now currently distributes films theatrically, and I feel that on certain films that are distributed theatrically, subtitling on a theatrical level is completely acceptable because of the size of the image and the content of the dialogue that you deal with in a film. There are rules for those types of subtitles, and we adhere to them when we do subtitle films. If any of you had the opportunity of seeing, can you hear me? Is this on? If any of you had the opportunity to see the Capo Cagliostro, which was shown, I think, at the Town Theater sometime this week, maybe I'm wrong, but we did play that, and because of a scheduling conflict and the frustration of TMS over the name of Lupin, we were asked to subtitle this film, which we did do because there's a legal hassle with the name Lupin, and we had to change his name to Wolf as per the instructions of TMS in order to get the film released in the United States. It's a small sacrifice that one has to pay to see a film. And it was subtitled as a film is subtitled, which is physically burned into the film, or you can do it optically. We had the film instead of the previous printing, and we burned the subtitles. To me, that type of subtitling, if you've seen Lupin, is very acceptable to a viewing audience watching a foreign film. I am also releasing a subtitled version of a film called Twilight of the Cockroaches. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but that's a live-action and animated film, and that is subtitled. But primarily what we do is release films in an English-language version due to the concept of trying to show a film in a theatrical setting to the largest audience possible. Even though we only make 10 or 12 prints of a movie that we release, potentially we want to reach a large audience, and research proves that most people do not want to read films, they want to watch films. I am now involved in doing video comics, which is a sub-business of Streamline Pictures, and it's putting material out on video. And so far we've released 13 titles, and by the end of the year we'll have about 24 titles, and by the beginning of next year we'll have about 45 titles. So we're going to have a huge volume of Japanese animation on the market, as well as contemporary and or even vintage American animation. So the goal from our company is to continually expand the product line, not one a year, one a month, but 3 or 4 titles a month, and really within the next couple of years have about 75 or 100 titles out there continually build an ongoing relationship with manga, anime, and anything else that we can deal with to really promote this stuff. And I highly encourage all the efforts of all the other gentlemen and companies on this panel to get more product into the marketplace, because that's the only way this is going to happen. The only thing that I have to say about the difference between subtitles and dubbing, in my own estimate, is that all animation, regardless of how it is made, is dubbed. It is all dubbed. There's no way that you can make animation without dubbing. Whether you make it in Japan, or the United States, Italy, it's always dubbed. There is no real sound in a cartoon. It's like if there's a movie when Clint Eastwood walks down the street, he says something, you hear him talk, you also hear the background noise of the street. Even though sometimes they will enhance that dialogue through the looping process. All cartoons are not done that way, they're done post-dub. When you do an English language adaptation of a Japanese cartoon, or any foreign language cartoon, you have the opportunity of stripping away the original language and applying the language of choice for the country that it's going to be shown in. If you have interest in trying to match mouth movements to the speech, it becomes a very difficult task. And I have found in the course of doing this for about 11 years, only 4 people in the United States that can write any type of dialogue that is interesting to relate to the mouth movements. When I made my own company about 3 years ago, my philosophy was not to change any of the scripts. So everything you hear that Streamline does is based on the original Japanese animation. The script is no alterations in terms of dialogue, content. There may be, in terms of the specifics of the words, but nothing more content. If you don't like what you hear, it may be because you're conditioned or like Japanese language for the English language, or like the Japanese actor for the English actors. I don't feel that there's any differences, primarily from watching these things. I'll stop very quickly before you see Nancy. But I want to get this out, and then we can just leave. We can totally just step over. The last thing I really want to get across is that, to me, I understand fandom fairly well. I am not particularly, I don't consider myself a fan. Although I understand fandom, I consider myself an entrepreneur. So what I want to do is maximize the acceptance and depth of animation, be it Japanese animation, Canadian animation, 50-year-old animation by Jack Schley as Colonel Fleet, to the largest audience possible. That's my goal as a businessman. What I have to do that may not be the best thing for the fans of manga or anime or just, people in general, because, things change. What happens is, I now find myself in a dilemma, because aesthetically, I understand what everyone says, and I can appreciate the frustration. Constructively, I'm now going to solve this problem in a very easy way for people that have Laserdisc players. I'm now releasing all of our titles on Laserdisc in full language formats. So if you want to hear Japanese language, listen to the Japanese track. If you want to hear it in English, click a switch and hear it in English. It solves the complete problem that all the fans have. And it also solves my major problem, which is putting subtitles on animation, because I think it takes away from the visuals of the cartoon, of the physical movement as you see it go by. I'm also going to be releasing stuff in connoisseur editions, which I feel is significant, because when I do stuff, for example, I hate the dubbing of Akira. I absolutely hate it. It's unbelievably bad. And even though we've sold quite a number of the videos through the open market, I am going to release a subtitled version of it. I am not, unfortunately, going to be producing the subtitling of it, because Kodansha has approved their own subtitled version, which I will be releasing on videotape. So you can, in the next couple of months, buy Akira subtitles if you want to, for the same price, $29. And I'm going to continue to do that with every product that I get because I have a responsibility, I feel, to you to put the stuff out in a way that you want to see it so that I don't have to answer these questions anymore. And then I also feel that on that level I will teach people, when I start subtitling my own stuff, I'm going to be subtitling my own stuff, and I will teach a philosophy of subtitling, which will, I think, make everything very easy, because I have my own philosophy about subtitling. And I will do this in a way that it'll be even available for theatrical viewing. And that's about it. I'm over.
Well, gee, Carl, you were in the wrong panel, and you should have been here 2 hours ago when we were talking about how to do subtitles, right? Yeah, can we hear from Mike at the end there? And then I'll make your comments.
Well, I don't know that I can really add much that hasn't been said already. My name is Michael Faust, and I'm one of Animego's translators, so I come at this from a slightly different angle, I suppose, than most of the people on this panel. I don't actually run any of the businesses involved or actually produce the subtitles, although that's going to change soon. What I do is I actually take the original work and produce or co-produce the translations that Animego uses. So my feeling on subtitling versus dubbing is that dubbing, I think, would be fine if it were being done in what I thought would be a competent fashion. I've seen dubbing into English from about 4 different languages, and I have yet to see something that I thought personally was as good in English as it was in its original form. That's usually the fault of having voice actors in English who don't seem to care very much about what they're doing. So as a result, I've become, I guess I've become more involved in subtitling by default, because I find with subtitling it's usually possible to you get to keep the original voices, but you also get to understand if the translation is written well. And I like to think that at least that we're writing good translations, that you get to understand what's going on as well. Without because I personally find bad dubbing more distracting than any subtitles except the forest kind of subtitles, which are, if you have acid burn subtitles, you get white subtitles on white background. You might as well not have them there. But aside from that, I'd say I've vastly prefer subtitling to dubbing, at least as it stands now. If there were to be good dubbing with actors who gave a damn about what they were doing, and competent translations, then that would be another story. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Although I hope that changes, because dubbing is clearly the only way to reach mass market. But well, it hasn't happened yet that I can see at any rate.
Okay. One thing I think it's important to recognize is that everybody on this panel has the same goal, which is to make this mass market form of entertainment in this country. And I think in many ways we're all going at it just in our own particular vision of the right way to go at it. Some of us are coming and trying to build the base of fans by using subtitling as sort of a springboard to build a base so that we can show that there's a market, and then at a later date we're going to go and start doing dubbing to reach the larger markets once we've sort of built some distribution channels and sort of built sort of a big enough market of fans that they sort of act as our little undercover spies and go out and sort of infiltrate the American consciousness. Whereas Carl is sort of taking it from the top down with the movies and some of the mass market video that he's trying to do. We're going for the same goal. We're just sort of coming at it from opposite ends. And probably about a year and a half, we're going to kind of hit in the middle. My personal opinion is that subtitles are a means to an end. They are not an end in themselves. I fully expect to do dubbed versions of our films at a time that I believe that it's economically feasible, and that may be next week. It may be next month. It may be next year. It's just a matter of economics. When I do so, however, I want to do it right. And I think that part of the problem is that the United States does not have a tradition of voice acting. In foreign countries, because all this mass media comes over from the United States, all these movies, there is a community of voice actors who know how to do this job, who've got experience, they know the tricks. And this community is much smaller, and there's an argument to say it doesn't exist in the United States. About the closest you can come are radio actors. So, in many ways, I think that that's one of the reasons that a lot of people get upset about the dub jobs that are done. It's not because people don't want to do a good job, it's people who are doing it, at least in the acting talent, just haven't had any experience doing it properly. Or rather, the level of experience they've got is so much less than the people over in Japan who've been doing this for decades. So, they have tradition. But I think that's going to change, and I think that as we expand the U.S. market, it's going to get to the point where I keep telling some of the guys over in Japan that in a couple of years they're going to be doing the English version first and then dubbing it back into Japanese, and I don't know how difficult it is. So I think that a lot of what we're going to be talking about on this panel is more shades of interpretation than dubbing is better than subtitling and subtitling is better than dubbing. I think that they're both good and that they serve different markets, and I think both should be available. If you like the dub stuff, buy the dub stuff. If you like the subtitle stuff, buy the subtitle stuff. I'm certainly going to, if I do dubs, I'm never going to do a dub that I don't do a subtitle version. And what with Laserdisc, one of the ideas we're kicking around is to do a one-side dub with the Japanese on the separate audio channel, the other side subtitled. If it's economically feasible, I'll do that. That way, I get the whole market.
Why do you have to do it on two sides?
Because I want to have the second side subtitled.
How did you do it with closed caption?
Because the quality of closed caption isn't good enough in terms of the typographic quality, and also not a lot of people have closed caption.
Why don't you do a letter?
On letterbox stuff, I can do that, but a lot of OEDs aren't letterbox. On letterbox stuff, I'm going to ship the letterbox company form of there's a lot of, I'm sure that Carl and I, for example, probably have a lot more differences of opinion on the way to do subtitling right than on whether or not I probably agree with him more about dubbing than I do about subtitling. And I'd like to personally say that Carl has showed me a dub of a film that he doesn't have the rights to, but he did a dubbing job for, and it's literally the best thing I've ever seen. He did excellent work on it, and so when you get the voice actors right, and the direction right, and the script right, you can do a dub that's as good or even something better than the original stuff.
Are you talking about Totoro?
Of course I'm talking about Totoro, Carl. Totoro, it's a crime that you guys haven't been able to see it, because it's awesome.
It's great. We saw it.
I showed it one time in San Diego. I was able to squeeze Tokuma to let me show it one time, and we have a 35mm print of it, and in English, and we were able to show it once at the Japan Foundation or some Japanese organization in New York City, and people went bananas because it is very, very good. And that's the kind of work that my company does when we're allowed to do it correctly, and that's how Akira could have been.
So that's the whole question, though.
No, it's not. That's not the whole question. The bottom line is here's the bottom line for Akira in the United States. If you wanted that film in the United States, okay, Kodansha had already spent a ridiculous amount of money to dub it into English, whether it's good or bad. Kodansha did that. They wanted that film put in the United States. They went to every major distributor in the United States, bar none. You name a company, they were there. They showed them the film after 5 minutes. They said, forget it, no one will release it. I came into them, I begged them to let me try to distribute this film. I said, I don't like the dubbing, I would like to redo the dubbing. If you want the film, you must take it in this form. Fine. I took it, I put it out. It's playing, it's made a lot of money in theaters. It's caused a lot of people to become aware of this thing theatrically. It's caused us to get more and more films out and do it. And because it was not great, doesn't mean that it shouldn't have the opportunity to be played, because this is what that company wanted. When I did Totoro, and within 48 hours we were contacted to do Kiki's delivery service in English, because they loved it. We did Kiki's delivery service for the people in English. That film is done too. My company wants to get the rights to distribute those in the United States because we know we can distribute them and they're excellent. This company, Pokemon, will not allow us to distribute them because they think that they're so good that they can get $1 million to sell them to some big company. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to go to Paramount, Columbia, Universal. They're trying to make a deal right now to get them sold. It's not going to happen immediately. And if it does happen, I guarantee you that the version that was dubbed by us is not the version that goes into theaters. Because if Universal or one of those other companies buys it, they will say this is not good for the American market. You've got to have Mickey Rooney do the voice of Totoro. You've got to have and they'll redub it with celebrity voices, and that will be another example of how American entertainment industry does not understand this material. The reason that we're able to maintain this ongoing momentum is that we're picking things that I can buy at a fairly inexpensive cost and do it. I think that our dubbing on Fist of the North Star is excellent. I think it's absolutely appropriate for the story and it's quite good. I thought that the dubbing for The Lensman was as good or as appropriate as it could be for that particular film. I think the Zillion stuff is all right. We're not going to be doing Nadia. That's going to be the quality of Totoro in terms of dubbing.
Oh, do you have the film and the TV series?
Of what?
Of Nadia.
Nadia, I have the rights to the television series and was just given the rights to the film as of
You mean the sequel film or
the theatrical.
Okay, yeah.
The one where they're older.
Okay. What about, what are you considering doing on the compilation, the Nova story compilation?
I have no knowledge of that particular property due to the fact that I'm dealing through an incredibly vast maze of Japanese companies to get the rights to this thing. The film was originally produced by NHK and Sogal Vision, and it was distributed internationally by Toho. I made a deal with Toho. Toho gets money, they give money to NHK, NHK gives money to this other company. So there's like this concatenated mirage, out there of, faces that you have to deal with to get the rights. No one ever gave me any opportunity to have the, whatever you call this, the Nautilus, the Atlantis,
Nautilus story.
Yeah, the Nautilus story. That was not part of the negotiation, because I would guarantee you that Toho doesn't even know that it exists. So
They better. It just came out of Laserdisc.
no, they better not, because that's not what Toho is in business to do. Toho is in business to be the international distributor of Nadia. It was sold. I bought it in the United States. I have the rights to all of it. If I want to get the Nautilus story, I have that. If I want to get any of that stuff, I have it because I now have the rights to it. And it's not a different entity. It's part of the same footage. If I want to edit it, I can, which I don't do. If I ever disclose my contracts, you'll see in my contracts, the Streamline Pictures contracts, that there's a huge clause in there which says that Streamline Pictures does not have the right to change any visual or storyline in this film without written consent by the producers or the copyright holders. So in other words,
we do the same thing.
I have no interest in changing these things. And the whole point of it is we want to cooperate with the Japanese. The Japanese now really find that they can deal with us on a very professional level. And we're now actually making movies in Japan right now, right alongside the Japanese at the same time. I'm working on Old Man Z, which is the new Otomo film right now. I'm actually one of the producers on that. And I'm going to be the producer and perhaps even the writer of this new film called JoJo. And that's my goal. My goal is to get these films done at the exact same time so that there is no bullshit about, the Japanese version is better than the American version. It's not what the Japanese producers don't want. It's going to be a global production. And at that point in time, everybody's goals are going to be satisfied. That's going to be something that we can work towards in a very positive and cooperative manner.
When you choose your dubbing, now we've always seen good dubbing and bad dubbing, and when you choose you watch the production first, and then you say, oh, I'm going to choose Joe and Harry because I know them, and they're going to be in all my dubs. Those voices are always going to be on all, or do you have a repertoire? Do you say, oh, well, you would be good for her, you would be good for him?
No, I have a repertory group of people. Oh, Farragut Megan is our hero. Oh, yeah. No, the way I look at it is this. There's a community, as Robert said, there's not that many voice actors that know how to do this with any level of professionalism. And through the course of 11 years of doing this kind of stuff, I have determined on the West Coast...
And there are 5 of them.
No. There's about 70 actors that I have in a repertory venue. And the majority of the best actors that we deal with are no longer dubbing because it doesn't pay very much. I'm one of 3 companies in the world with the Screen Actors Guild in order to use every actor available if I so choose to. Yeah. Most the stuff that was bad was all done prior to me having Streamline Pictures, or anybody that can hear doing stuff in English. Because when I started Streamline Pictures, I formed an association with the Screen Actors Guild because I wanted to pay actors more money, and I wanted to be able to ultimately give them residuals, which they never got. And that's why the actors are, they're not that they're bad actors, it's just that they're going to come in and for an hour they get $35 an hour because that's what Harmony Gold wanted to pay them. And they had to feed their faces that day, so they worked for $35 an hour. At that level, they wanted to try to get as many jobs as they could in a day. So they all had their little day runners, and they were going to do Rick Hunter at the 8 in the morning, 8 to 10, and then have a quick fight and go down to Saban Studios and do Johnny Thunder from 9 to 12. In order to pay the bills, because it's such a weird deal. No residuals, no nothing. Because of that, there's like this stigma, dubbing is shitty. Pardon my language if anyone's offended by that. What I did when I formed Streamline Pictures, we formed a union with the Guild, and the Guild has what's called a union contract for dubbing foreign films into English. Very specific rates of pay. Every actor in the world knows it. It's $100 minimum to say one line. If I get a guy to say one line, I have to pay him $100. And then after that, it's $50 an hour for their time. You're allowed to show it in 2 mediums without paying residuals. The third medium, you have to pay residuals for all mediums. In other words, I can do it theatrically and home video for the initial cost. If I do theatrical, home video, and broadcast, then I have to pay them additional money. So now all the actors know this. And in the stuff like Kokoro and Kiki's Delivery Service and Lensman and all this other stuff, they're acting better because they now go, oh, I can get more money. And that's what's going to happen. And I'm one of the few companies that's doing this specifically with cartoons. And there are, as I said, only a very few voice actors that can do stuff. The thing that, one last thing I have in the top of my head about voice acting, Japanese voice acting versus American voice acting and everything else. I did the most stupid thing anyone has ever done ever that requested us to do something from Japanese to English. It was a thing that was a Golgo 13 comic book video. I don't know if any of you ever saw this thing. It's the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen in my life. Somebody took panels of Golgo 13 comic books and they shot them with a video camera. And it's just like an animatic. Okay, here's a panel drawn by the manga artist, and they colored it with a marker, and then they had guys talk over it. Okay, now these things are incredibly popular in Japan. They sell for about $9 equivalent, and they sell 50,000, 80,000 copies of these things a month. The guys that produce it said, hey, these are going to be really popular in the United States. Hire Streamline Pictures, have them dub one into English. I said, I really don't want to do this. They said, do it. And I said, all right. And I gave them a price. It was really a stupid price to do this thing. They paid me the money, and they did it. When it was done, and they listened to it, they loved it because there were South American people in it, there were Scottish people in it, there were English people in it, and all sorts of different accents, which is what was happening in the film. We go to South America, there's a Scottish guy that comes in there, and the guy told me, what we like about what you did was the fact that you placed these people in the context of their own nationality.
Match the realism.
To match the realism of the art, because there is no way that you can speak Japanese with a Spanish accent, or speak Japanese with a Hungarian accent or a Scottish accent. It doesn't happen. And that makes it more realistic. And whenever you do stuff like that and you understand what's happening and can read the script and know that this guy's Scottish or German, and you can apply that accent or that approach to the character, it makes a more fulfilling and rewarding visual experience for cinema.
What's your excuse for the bad Japanese accent and Robot kind of that was terrible.
No, the excuse was we discussed this with Kazafumi Nomura. We come up
That's
with
insulting to Japanese people.
It's not.
Yes, it is.
Well, it may be insulting to some of the Japanese people you know, but I went through the process with the producer. Okay? It's not that I do this in a vacuum. I went through the process with Kazafumi Nomura, explained what we wanted to do with this film, and he agreed completely. He oversaw the selection of voices and accepted the thing all the way down the line. Completely accepted. It was not something that I did in a vacuum. It was accepted by the guy that made the movie. Whether or not you believe me, maybe the Antichrist is lying. It's true. Hard to believe, it's true. He loved it. He also loved Presence, because Presence was put into England. And the guy had a British accent. He loved it. He thought it was fantastic. And because of the work we did on Presence and on The Tale of Two Robots, we're now working on Old Man Z and JoJo for this company. And that, people respect it. It's not like I'm doing something in a void. I'm doing something, I thought it was insulting myself. Personally, I said no. The reason that it was even brought up is because some of my business associates felt that these people should sound Japanese.
But they don't sound Japanese. They sound like they're
Pigeon. They sound like they're like Hawaiian guys.
They sound like they're doing something from a 1930s Charlie Chan movie.
Exactly.
They sound like the Japanese guy on Gilligan's Island.
That's correct.
Who showed up.
That's correct. And the reason that was done is because of the philosophy of trying to understand what that story was.
Okay, we have a comment from the other side of the table now.
Hi. Okay, I have 2 points I want to make, and the latter point specifically is Carl's talking about. Okay. You're talking about subtitling and dubbing. The reason why I personally currently prefer subtitling over dubbing is because it's more ethnically correct. You get the full cultural ambience. Now, in all Japanese animation, you're not always dealing with Japanese characters. Like, for example, in our own Gunbuster, there's a character, Young Freud, who's Soviet. Okay, now related to what Carl's talking about, that's a problem, and it's going to be a hump that we're going to have to get over to do correct. Let's say, for example, a film like Akira. Now, I love Akira, and Akira takes place in Neo Tokyo in Japan. So, in my opinion, if it were to be dubbed, the characters should sound Japanese. Now, how do you make them sound Japanese without making them stereotyped? See, there's a problem, and it's going to take some time to adapt to that. Let's say, for example, if they did a film, okay, I don't know how many people in here are familiar with a film called Armageddon. Okay, everybody here has seen it. It's like one of my favorite films, right? Okay, there's a character in Armageddon named Sony, who's a young black kid in the film. Now, it's the same problem that someone would have doing that film, because the film that we once upon a time considered doing. How would you make him sound? He has to be correct. It has to be correct. And the same thing would apply to Akira, where if it's Kaneda, the people have to say his name right. And it's basically not the opinion has to be correct. So I think there's this problem that it's not Carl's fault that the characters sound the way they do in Tale of Two Robots or anything like that. It's something that they're going to have to work on to make it correct. It shouldn't be stereotyped, but it should be correct. That's my point.
Actually, I have one comment. I always thought that the way to avoid all the criticism was just to get the original voice actors, teach them English, and get them to do that. There's a few problems with that. Yeah.
Let me take a minute, since we're, as U.S. Manga Corps, we're new to this. Can I take a quick couple of polls with y'all? First of all, does anybody really prefer one over the other? Everybody who would really prefer to see a subtitle and keep the original Japanese, raise their hand. Okay. Now, people who would really prefer to have it dubbed and not have to bother reading it, raise their hand. Okay, roughly,
we have the don't give a damn
Okay, don't give a damn.
This is the don't give a damn crowd.
Okay, so secondly, if you're putting it into subtitles, there's two philosophies, and I'd like to get Carl to express his a little bit more with Robert. The one way to do it is to have real long subtitles, so you really have a lot of space and a lot of words. You can really try and say what the guy's saying, okay? Which means, you know, you're watching the whole bottom of the screen as opposed to watching the picture, or you have to pause sometimes because you don't have time to read it. And the other end of the spectrum would say, hey, try and get the gist of what they're trying to say. Make it as short as possible so it's really easy to read, and then they can go back to watching it. Let me ask, everybody who would prefer to have the longer kind of subtitle at the expense of the reading, raise their hand. And then people who would prefer to have it really short, like the absolute minimum, just to get the gist of what's going on. Okay. And then can I ask Carl and Robert to address those two issues, because that's one of the things that we're discovering is there seems to be some discussion on that point.
Carl, okay. Our philosophy about subtitling is it's like children. Children should be seen and not heard, and subtitles should be read and not noticed. At the same time, we think it's important for people to understand what they're actually saying. And these two goals are in direct conflict with each other. So what we're trying to do is use a philosophy of subtitling that does show you, tell you what they're saying, edited into English from a direct literal translation, so that they are saying what they would have said if they were speaking English. If they were English speakers, I think is actually a better way to put it. At times, this results in fairly long titles. And we try to keep this to a minimum, but we also try to compensate for that by using every typographical trick and every titling trick in our little bag of tricks in order to make the titles as easy to read as possible. What we found is that if we do our job correctly, and if we precisely synchronize the titles to the vocal utterance, when your ear hears somebody speaking, it goes ear to brain, this is Japanese, what the hell are they saying? And the brain then goes brain to eyes, stage down, and your eye clicks down to the title and gets it in your direct foveal vision for about a tenth of a second, and then you click back up and continue watching the action. And then the instant sort of after image that you have of the subtitle, coupled with your peripheral vision, lets you read it. Subtitling is always going to be a compromise. You can reduce the amount of distraction time by reducing the size of the title, but you do that at the expense of comprehension. And in a lot of the animation, especially the animation that Animego tends to like to do, there's a lot of content in there that if you don't get it, you'll be lost. So I tend to err on the side of being wordy, although we do a lot of tight editing to reduce that as much as possible and try and be concise, and also try and keep the characterization in there. But, you know, I just have to say that my personal bias is more to telling people what they're saying and telling people what's going on, and if that makes it a little tad more difficult to read than a really short, concise subtitle, then that is a limitation of the medium, and it's a compromise that I think is the right compromise to make. Carl?
I think that if any of you will have the opportunity to see a film that's subtitled traditionally, as opposed to subtitled for a specific targeted market for a specific purpose, you'll find that there's an art in writing subtitles. It is like poetry. And I've subtitled 2 theatrical films, Castle of Cagliostro and The Twilight of the Cockroaches. And both of those subtitled films are remarkable in their own ways. And what was fascinating about writing subtitles is that the process we use burns letters onto existing film as opposed to an optical subtitle where you can put drop shadows in, which is the preferred method if you have all the money in the world, which my company doesn't have at this time. When you do that and you learn the rules of subtitling, 34 characters per line, maximum 2 lines per card, which has been done since the beginning of time, as far as cinema is concerned. Even when they did silent movies like The Gold Rush and everything else, they were subtitled movies. You find that there's a very easy viewpoint. Whenever a movie goes by and you're really concerned about the voice actor, the content of the voice, what the guy is saying, you watch something, and the gist of something is I'm going to go to the store to buy 3 oranges and 4 bananas. That's what the guy maybe says in his line of dialogue. And the subtitle, and if there's no significance to the fact that he's buying 3 oranges or 4 bananas, and you say, got to go to the store to buy some fruit, or whatever it is you're going to say, what happens is you can get by with a absolutely adequate subtitle and allow the movie to be viewed much easier than having to read all this stuff and be given unnecessary information that, judgment call, be it what it may, to allow you to enjoy the movie. I think it's more enjoyable to watch a film rather than read subtitles.
Yeah, if I can just jump in real quick on the U.S. renditions perspective, and then Dave there's something about this that we've been talking about. On our first video, and I'll just highlight Gunbuster Part 1 because that was the one we really had more input with the Japanese. We selected a subtitle font that was really large and was more of a kind of a gist sort of translation than word for word. And that was something actually that the studio themselves wanted to do. It was a really big, readable subtitle, but it obscured a lot of the bottom of the frame. So when we had the opportunity to do Gunbuster 2 and Appleseed and Black Magic, we made the decision, because we were given more control over the product, to go with the exact formula Carl's mentioned, which is 2 lines and 34 characters a line. And also we had a different set of translators, which was Toshi Yoshida and Trish Ledoux, and we were a lot more comfortable with the way we've done it this time. And I think the 2-line, 34-character approximation really tends to work. And watching them all now, and giving myself some distance on it, I feel that it's you can read it and not lose the image. A lot of the animation, it's not like with something like Akira where there's a lot happening, it's full animation. You need to see everything. With certain OVAs, in all honesty, you have time to catch the whole image and read the subtitles. It's not like it's full animation and everyone in the background is doing something different that you need to pay attention to. So there are some realities to the quality of animation that we're dealing with. It's not like every frame of the aesthetic is essential to understand what's going on. And then Dave had a point.
Okay, basically, the market that U.S. Renditions is aiming for at this point in time is the fan market, and we're also trying to... Hello? Can you hear me? Great. Okay. Basically, our target audience is the Japanese animation fan market. Now, as through my experience with being a Japanese animation fan, all the a pro subtitler, I've ascertained that there's 2 types of people. Japanese animation fans basically fall under, we're talking the hardcores, fall under a certain category, and that's that of the active watcher. And the other people are what I call passive watchers. What an active watcher is someone whose active brain is actively working to decipher what's going on the screen. You go out, you buy Animag and Horticulture Addicts, and you read synopsis. You really want to know what's going on because there's this cultural barrier that's there that you have to work your way through. Now, the passive watchers are people who basically want to see it dubbed. That doesn't mean that's worse or better, but most people in the United States are passive watchers. People who come home and want to chill out, look at MASH or look at Twin Peaks or something like that. They don't want to. They don't want to deal with any like quote unquote foreign concepts. They don't want to deal with any like ethnic differences. They just want to watch it. They just want pure feed, and that's the difference. That's why I think people prefer the fans prefer subtitling, because they're used to getting the information. They want to enjoy the whole of it. They want the whole ambience, the whole experience as it's experienced in Japan.
I'd like to just make one extra comment before we go to questions. If you mind, sorry. I don't necessarily disagree with anything that Carl said. If I differ from him, it's more in a matter of degree and shades of interpretation than anything else. I think that one of the advantages of video subtitling over film subtitling is that you have a great deal better typographical quality unless you're going to the real optical titles, such that within the restrictions of the medium you can get away with more, because with respect to titles, it's a sort of a product of how tough it is to read and how long it is. It's a multiplication factor. And you can get away with a longer title with more complex thoughts in it if your typographical quality and ease of reading is much better. And the video, the quality you can get in video is better than the burned-in stuff. It just is.
Can I just interrupt?
Sure.
Let me ask you this. Okay. Say you're going to take a film that's a theatrical film, and you're going to subtitle it.
Well, theatrical is big.
No. Okay. And you subtitle it, okay? Because what I'm going to do now, and you'll hear this for the first time, which is kind of a funny thing to do, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Every film I get from Japan, I get two things for theatrical use. I get a 35 millimeter work print, which is a film that's in 35 millimeter in Japanese language. Then I also get a preprint thing, which is either a negative or an inner positive or an inner negative, so that I can make